If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
I'd like to welcome back our guest again, Katrin Silva. Now, Katrin has been on before. The last time, or been on a few times actually, the last time we talked about horses that are going in the right direction and just making sure that horses' training is going in the right direction. But I know that if someone goes through that checklist, they probably think, oh no, this is not going in the right direction. And it was more of a checklist, what can I do? The obvious choice is to have a trainer. So Katrin's going to talk to us today about making sure that we've got the right trainer, but what we should do or how we know if we haven't got the right trainer. So it's sort of just putting us again in the right direction. Now, Katrin, where are you? I'd like to welcome you back.
Hi there. Thank you for having me back. And I just got off my last horse and drove home, and I'm ready to talk about red flags.
Perfect. Because I know that choosing a trainer, you get the right trainer, they're not the right one for everyone. Someone might recommend a trainer and, you have a horse and you form a relationship with the horse. You want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for the horse, but there's certain things, red flags, we've called them, just to make sure that the trainer is the right match for ourselves and for our horse and, a bit of trial and error. But there's some things, and I know that, as a coach and going out and assessing coaches and training them, there's some things that I know it's a red flag for me, and I'm sure you're going to be talking about that. It's not saying that it's wrong. We just need to clarify, ask them to explain the shortfalls, what you can accept, what you and your horse is going to accept because you've got that relationship anyway, and be prepared to ask yourself if you want to keep working with this particular trainer or you should work a little wider. Is that sort of explaining where we're coming from with this?
Yeah, and so, and really I want to, just say ahead of going into those red flags, into those phrases that, really make me sit back and think, okay. There's so many trainers out there and so many teaching styles. And I think, there's room for a lot of different trainers in this world. And I know I have my niche and I have a lot of colleagues that I refer people to that, if they want something different. And I think there's room for a lot of different teaching styles and a lot of different approaches to training. And I think there's room for natural horsemanship and there's room for dressage and there's room for jumping and there's room for, Western and there's room for all of those things. But still, there's some things that, I think the culture of horse training and the nature of the horse business is also changing in a better direction than this traditional model where trainers had this full authority and clients would just drop their horse off and never, look at it again until they showed it in amateur classes or just very infrequently visited the horse under close supervision. I think that is not really feasible anymore. So now there's a lot more variety there and a lot more demand for good teaching and good coaching and the kind of standards of training that are not going on behind closed doors. So I think it's all very exciting. And so horse trainers are humans, of course, and so there's a lot of personalities out there, and not every trainer will be the right person for every client, but so everybody finds their clientele, but then there's some things that I think we should actively discourage.
Yeah, I love the way you've explained that. Look, Katrin, just before we get started, I'd just like to remind people about International Horse College. And International Horse College has a motto, people, safety and horse welfare. So if that's the way you feel when you're working with your horse or working around horses, have a look at the website, internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. But also keep listening because I know that Katrin feels exactly the same way. And I love the way that you've got such an open mind, Katrin. You're just talking about it, that it doesn't have to be strict and there's lots of disciplines. And, you talked about your particular niche. So starting off in Germany, and then it must have been a bit of a culture shock then to come to the US, but they're all horses. And now you're doing a lot of Western dressage, but expanding from there. can we go, you go to competitions, because I know that you'd go to a lot of competitions and just out training and listening and going into different stables. So I'll go into a stable or, an adjustment centre, and I may be there to be with one of my students, but then you walk past a trainer who says some of these things, and you're right, I cringe as well. The first one I want to talk about, yes, crank the noseband as tight as you can, or use a bigger bit, or let's put him in draw reins, but changing the gear. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place to change gear, but, let's talk about the noseband. It shouldn't be that the horse gets numb around the nose. Why? It's just too...
And there is this old German gold standard of, you have to be able to put, 2 fingers, between the nose and the nose all the way around. And, usually it's like, I like it to make it more like 4 fingers. And, it's like there's a place for a noseband, there's a place for a cabeçon, but it's not to crank the mouth shut so the horse can't chew on the bit or the horse can't move the jaw. I mean, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to remind the horse that you can close your mouth again to encourage the horse to accept the contact, but, and to line up the upper and lower jaw a little bit. So it's like a guidance tool. It's supposed to be gentle. It's not supposed to be like, oh, you open your mouth. Well, it's a little bit like when you're driving your car and the check engine light, the big red light comes on, and you think, oh, well, we can fix that. And you get out your duct tape and you put some black duct tape over it, and then the light is gone. And then you think, okay, well, we fixed that. Well, that doesn't fix the engine. So if the horse, has trouble accepting contact, and the horse opens his mouth, and the horse is playing with the bit, these are all things that the horse is saying, well, I don't understand this. How can you explain it to me better? The horse is searching. The horse is looking. We shouldn't discourage that. And so, there's a time and a place for putting a flash noseband on a horse. I mean, I rarely do it, but I recognize, sometimes that's a good thing if the horse really has, habits of evading the bit. And then there's different nosebands out there, but never ever have it super tight. That's you try for if the next time you ride your horse, try to clench your jaw shut as tight as you can, and then just see if you can relax anywhere else in your body. You really can't.
Mm-hmm. And I love the way that you say, ask the trainer to explain. Why do we have to have a bigger bit? Why do we need him in draw reins? Why are we putting the noseband tighter?
Yeah, and draw reins, I'm not saying there's never, I don't own a pair of draw reins. In my 30 years of doing this professionally, I've never, and all the problem horses I've retrained, I've never felt the need to use draw reins. I have friends who do, and I respect that, but it's a means to an end, and they use them very carefully a few times until the horse understands, oh, I can give at the pole, and then they never use them again. So, I don't, but I respect that there's some good trainers who, maybe have a reason to do that. But it should never be something like, oh, he sticks his nose up in the air. Let's put the draw reins on. That'll show him. I mean, that just, you can just create so much damage that way.
Yes. It's always interesting too when you see a person riding and you go, oh, yes, you must get lessons with such and such, because they always want you to, have the draw reins on or have that type of bit, or have, that every horse seems to go in a particular bit of gear, because that's the way that they train, but every horse is an individual.
Right. And I'm not saying it's like switching bits can be super helpful if the horse has trouble with the contact. It's like, well, let's try a loose ring instead of a D ring. Let's try this thing, this different brand of bit. Let's try this different material. But, it's like there's a difference between that and saying, oh, well, he's not respecting this mild bit, so let's put him in a severe bit that'll really cause him pain. That'll only teach the horse that bits cause pain. Is this something we want the horse to know? So, there's a difference. Like, a different bit, that's one thing. But, just say, oh, well, let's put a shank bit on him. Let's put a twist bit on him, like bits that aren't even legal to compete in. That's a huge red flag there. If you say, well, this is something we can't even really do in public, but we'll do it at home just to make the horse listen, and then we hope that he maintains it when we show him, that's not really correct training then.
No. What about a trainer who, may just happen to have a horse or two for sale, who says constantly to all their students, you need a different horse. You do so much better on this nice horse that I happen to have for sale. What about that? The trainers tend to use, they make a lot more money out of buying and selling horses than what they do for training.
Oh, yeah. So, it may be a perfectly legitimate thing to say. I've said to a couple of students over the years, here and there, I've said, yes, this is not working out. You do need a different horse. After I've given it my best shot and the student has given it her best shot, and we've tried everything, and the personalities just don't match. If it's a very strong-willed horse and a very timid rider, I've had that happen. It just wasn't ever a good partnership, and they did part ways and find a new horse and a new home, respectively. The other instances, if it's a real safety issue, is I think, oh my God, this rider is going to get hurt, and there's no way to really address that. There's no way to make that better. Then, I've said a couple of times, look, you do need a different horse. This horse is going to land you in the hospital. But if and there's a third instance, if I talk to a student and the student has plans of competing at a certain level, or has this dream of going to the quarter horse world show, or has a dream of finishing her bronze medal in dressage and getting to the horse to third level, and then the horse is either not sound, or the horse is a gated horse, or the horse is some like a Shetland pony, then I have to say, well, very likely the horse won't get you there. And so it's not really fair to ask a horse who physically can't do certain things to go to a level that they can't. I mean, that would be not fair to the horse. So there's instances. However, if your trainer says a lot to a lot of students, you should try that. You need a different horse. You would do so much better on this horse, and they just happen to have the right horse for sale, then a lot of times it is a conflict of interest, I feel. I mean, I don't ever sell horses to clients. I mean, the big reason for that is I'm a horrible salesperson, so I stay well away from that. And I respect and admire people who are good salespeople, but I think you have to be responsible about it. You don't just say, oh, well, I'm going to sell this horse to this person, even if it's not a great match, or even if she's not really looking for a horse, or even if her current horse could work out really well, because that would make me a big fat commission, and that's so much easier than training horses all day.
I love the way that you explained that, because you would explain to a client or a student, but it's about being responsible and not just thinking, well, I'm going to make a lot more money out of buying and selling horses than what I am out of teaching, and going down that route. What about if they've got the horse, or they may come along and the trainer starts to say things like, you're not a good enough rider for this horse?
Yeah, that's a guilt trip that I've heard trainers put their students on. So this is actually a variation of the last one, which is essentially saying you are too good a rider for this horse, you need a better horse. This one is you're not a good enough rider for this horse. And then what follows next is usually some version of, your horse is so talented and would be so much better with a professional like me riding him and showing him, if you keep riding him, he won't reach his potential. He won't go as far as he could go. It may be a legitimate thing to say you are not a good enough rider for this horse. I would maybe be a little more diplomatic about it. I would say right now, it's mostly a safety issue. Right now, you and this horse aren't really a good match. If your horse experience is limited, if your horse is green or has behavioral issues that really make this horse unsafe, it may be true, at least for now, that this is not, you're not a good enough rider for this horse. You're going to get hurt if you keep riding this horse. But the other side of that argument, your horse would do so much better. Your horse would, win this. Your horse would reach his potential. You're holding your horse back. You're ruining your horse by riding him. That is just baloney. And horses don't particularly care about winning ribbons, and a lot of horses, they live perfectly happy lives being trail horses and never, going as far as they could in any particular discipline. And I don't think the horse is really any worse off for that. It's like, I look at those horses, I think, oh my God, I could do really well with them, but if the owner doesn't really want the horse to stay in training and to show in open classes with me, well, then who am I to say? So.
And the whole guilt trip, as a human, as a person, sometimes trying to make someone else feel bad makes them feel good. It's a flaw in their own personality, but just taking that guilt trip a little bit further. What if they say things like, you've got no idea how to ride, you'll never be any good? Do you find trainers? I know that I have found trainers who say this all the time to their students, and not just to one, but to several.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen this across the disciplines. I've seen this with really well-known and highly paid dressage clinicians. I've seen this in the natural horsemanship world. I mean, very severely, where people are in tears where it's like this, and I think, making students feel really bad about their writing, it doesn't really teach them how to write better. I mean, I don't know about you, Glenys, but when I take a lesson and my instructor says, "You're the worst writer I've ever seen," I don't really learn anything from that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. If you're going to someone to be taught, you want to make sure that there's progress there. What about if they don't berate the rider, but they say something like, "Your horse has a bad disposition"?
But let's stick with the you have no idea how to ride. I've thought about this since I made this list. I mean, I grew up in Germany, and I got yelled at a lot as a child in group lessons on lesson horses, and I don't really remember much, from those early lessons, except that I thought that I would never learn how to ride. And I think in Germany and in Europe too, and maybe in the whole sport of dressage, it comes from this military tradition, where it was part of riding schools were part of the cavalry, and they were part of the military in different countries. And one of those common teaching strategies in boot camp, even here in the U.S. military, is like you tear them up before you build them. You tear them down before you build them up. And so, not that I would have never made it through boot camp, but I've heard people that have been in the military say that that's the strategy that's used. And then I think, well, yeah, that sounds very familiar. And so I think we have to change the culture around that. I think it's already changing, but I think there's still some remnants of that. Or maybe there's instructors who just make themselves feel better by making their students feel worse about themselves.
Yes, I know when I first went to the UK, I did a couple of training for instructor exams over there. And, it was very military and very much, no, you don't talk to them like that. You don't talk to your students like that. You must speak like this. This is the command. This is the way you say it. This is what you need to do and say and everything else. And there's no please and thank you. And that, it just wasn't. It was very, very military. So you have to adapt your teaching style to that whole military background. Hopefully now it's changed a little bit. It was quite a while before when I was over there. But I know when I was first learning, that was the way you were supposed to teach, like military.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's changing, but there's still some teachers out there who, also, there is, I've heard it also, said, from trainers, who, I've even asked a trainer who I heard teach like that. I said, I did ask them, well, how are students supposed to learn? And they said, well, it's like if they can't learn from my teaching style, then they don't want it badly enough. And I think, whoa, no, that's just not true. So if your confidence is in shatters, you can't learn. I mean, I've been there. I've walked out of dressage clinics in tears. And I don't remember anything about it except that it cost me a lot of money and that I felt like I would never learn it. But on the other hand, the other extreme, there's teachers now who never ever criticize their students really and say, oh, everything's good, everything's wonderful. And that I don't agree with either, because that is just a waste of money. I mean, I think you can be constructive and positive and still challenge the students. There's like this middle ground that we all need to find.
Yes, and I agree. I agree that there are trainers there who it's just full of compliments. It's just full of, and then the students go out even to a competition, and we can sort of talk to a little bit later about this one, but the student's perfect, but it was a bad judge or a bad this or a bad that. Never about the students. Yep.
No, that's bad sportsmanship. Yeah, so I think we have to look for that middle ground where we're positive and we're constructive, and yeah.
Brendan Bergen's got a really good one. He talks at the end of the lesson, instead of doing, just a bit of feedback, he puts it into 2 wishes and a star, something that I would have liked to have done, something that I would like, my star is this is what I did great. And then, just getting that bit of a sandwich feedback, something else that they're working towards.
Yeah, that little bit of balance. Like, and I also like to tell my students, look, and when I feel like a student is disappointed in their writing, I say, look, I'm going to take a lesson with my trainer. You're invited to come. We're all in this together. We're all working on different things. This is, I happen to have more experience doing certain things, but like really it's, I'm still taking lessons. I'm still working on my seat every day. And so don't feel bad when you have things to work on. It's, I think that is important too, that you're vulnerable this way as an instructor, that you don't say, well, I'm perfect and you're not.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Taking it to the horse now. Your horse has a bad disposition. What can we say about that one?
Okay, so this comes across in different variations. Like your horse is a bad horse. Your horse is stubborn. Your horse is naughty. Your horse is I don't even want to say it. A piece of excrement. I've actually heard that. Yeah, your horse is just a bad horse. So you're making derogatory comments about the horse. To me, that is a huge red flag. And it translates as the trainer is frustrated and doesn't know how to help the horse or help the rider get along with the horse. And so, to me, that's not acceptable, because when you use abusive language about horses, then that often leads to physical abuse of horses. And that's never okay. So, I don't like to talk about horses that way. When I hear anybody at my barn doing this, like a farrier or one of the porters, I usually just initiate a conversation about that and say, well, what is this supposed to accomplish? And, horses don't understand it, but still it creates an environment and a tone that it just shouldn't be.
Yes, just that whole negativity.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like generalizing terms like, all mares are bitchy or all Arabians are crazy. I think we can do better than that. Instead of just putting it like that, that's making it way too easy. We can be more specific and say, okay, this is the behavior we'd like to change, and and also like those comments when people say, well, he was resisting me, he tried to do this to me. It's the horse like that, yeah. So I think we need to just, really think about how we use language about horses, and and they don't launch personal attacks against us. So we can, we can just, think about this a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think the whole ownership of the problem, like instead of blaming the horse, go, but what could I have done to fix this?
Yeah.
What did I do wrong to start it? What could I have done to fix it?
Yeah, what could I have done to make the situation better, to keep it from escalating? Yeah, was I asking too much? Was I asking the wrong thing? So these are the questions that are helpful and constructive, instead of just saying, oh, well, this is just a naughty horse.
Yeah. Now, I've got another one too. It's probably taking the military further, almost like a communist country or something, And I know that we're encouraging people, if the trainer does something wrong, to ask for that clarification, get them to explain, what did the horse do, what are we trying to achieve and everything. But what about when someone says, I'm the trainer, that's why. Listen, follow, and that's it. Just because I'm the trainer, they've got this authority over the rider, the horse, the whole environment. What can we say about people like that?
Well, that is not acceptable. Trainers are human. I know I am. I know all my colleagues are. They learn and they make mistakes just like everybody. And of course they do. So if you have a trainer who says, well, it's like, don't question what I do, don't ask why I'm doing that, that's a huge red flag. I mean, that's I think it's really unprofessional to say that. It's like refusing to answer a perfectly legitimate question. I mean, learning and teaching, that's a two-way street. You don't just, this is like back to this model of education where this banking model of education where you say, okay, so the trainer or the teacher is in possession of the knowledge, and then the students sit there with their heads empty, and then the teacher proceeds to stuff the knowledge into the student's head, and they just passively sit there, and then they regurgitate what they've learned, and then the teacher's job is done. But it really doesn't work that way, and learning really is a dialogue, and teaching really is a dialogue, and it works two ways. And so if you shut the dialogue down, it's not going to go well. And my students mostly are professionals in other areas, and they're smart people, and they want to learn, and they come from different backgrounds, but there's some overlap. So they want to know why they do the things they do, why I ask them to do the things they do, and I make every effort to answer that. And I think the reason some trainers shut people down like that is because maybe they mostly deal with children. I don't know, even then you shouldn't do that. But they just want to engage in the dialogue, and also they don't want to make themselves vulnerable, because it does make you vulnerable. Because I've found myself a few times having to say, I don't know. Let me think about it. Let me ask my mentor. Let me read up on it. Let me find the answer. I'll get back with it tomorrow, and or we'll look for it together. But it does make you vulnerable. And, I've changed my behavior in a couple of occasions when a student says, why do we do it like that? And I've thought about it, and I think, well, you're right. That makes no sense. Because I've always done it like that. We've always done it like that. That's not a very good answer.
No, that's right. It makes it, we talked before about having an open mind and always wanting to learn. But, we come across something that we don't know, that just encourages us to go out and learn more as well.
Oh, absolutely. I've made a lot of progress as a trainer and a writer, from students who challenge me like that. And I always thank them afterwards and say, well, this was maybe not super comfortable for me in that moment, but I've learned something from it.
Yep. Now, what about, and this is particularly jumping, that we might have a talented horse that's doing well, but we're a bit scared or apprehensive, or we're just not sure, doubtful. If the trainer comes along and goes, just do it, but we're worried, and we know that if we're worried, we're looking for some confidence, but they're saying, just do as I say. What can we do? What sort of situations could that happen? But, otherwise, what do we do there? What brings that on?
Well, I think it's, writing is an emotional endeavor for, most of us, especially, most of my students are adult amateurs. It's a lifelong dream for them to have a horse and ride a horse. And of course, there's fear, there's anxiety. When I learned to ride as a kid, I had no fear and anxiety because I just didn't think. I mean, you don't when you're 8 years old, but when you're older, you start and you think, well, and so, there's, and it's not this rational thing. So, first of all, I think we shouldn't dismiss those issues because they can be real roadblocks to a student making progress, not just in jumping, just in, even in learning to trot, learning to canter, learning to go on trail rides, expanding your comfort zone as a rider. That's huge. So, I encourage students to talk about their emotional issues. And if I see them freeze up and, I say, let's stop, let's take a deep breath. Let's see if we can come up with some strategies to work through that. And then, and so there's ways to engage that are more respectful to the student, first of all. And also more constructive, because it's not, if you just say, some trainers may think, oh yeah, I'm encouraging the students. It's like, oh, there's no reason to be fearful. There's no reason to feel discouraged after a lesson that didn't go as you planned. But that's not helpful. That's not constructive.
No, that's right. And I love the way that you're encouraging the students and encouraging them to be a bit more confident, to expand their comfort zone. What about, and this is not again for riding, because we're going through the red flags about your trainer, and we did talk, that they're going across disciplines. But this one too, just as a person, you don't necessarily want a friend like this, because if someone starts to bag another trainer or to say that this other student is not very good, they might be a terrible rider, or the trainer's got no idea what they're doing, what are they going to say about you, when you're...
Right. Yeah, so that's the next red flag. When trainers say, oh, this other trainer is an awful trainer and the worst trainer ever, and let me tell you all the things that she does, and they're like, oh, my other student did this and this and this, and it was really awful, and she's the worst rider ever. Well, then, if somebody, not just the trainer, but anybody talks badly about other people behind their backs, then they will, you can bet that they will say bad things behind your back when your back is turned. And so I think it's a very human thing to do. I catch myself doing things like that, where I just make some catty comment about another trainer, and it feels good for about a nanosecond, and then I feel awful. It's like, well, what? So we should discourage that. We shouldn't, we shouldn't perpetuate it. We shouldn't. I think in a lot of barns, the dynamic I've seen is that the trainer says to a student, shares those confidences, those negative comments about other trainers or other students, and then the student thinks, oh, now I'm in this inner circle. Now, my trainer really likes me, and she's sharing these things with me. But my God, I think we have to grow up, and barns should not be like middle school. They should be a place where people feel welcome and where people talk to each other instead of about each other.
Yeah, and I think particularly if there's a barn or an establishment where there's a couple of different trainers or instructors, they've got to support each other. Otherwise it just begets to be such an uncomfortable feeling that the barn itself is going to lose clients.
I've been in a barn like that. It was awful. I dreaded. It just, and I think it wasn't good for the horses either. I think the horses could feel all that tension. I think there's room for all of us in this world. It's a big world. There's a lot of horses and a lot of different training methods and riding styles, and I think we can all find our niche and support each other. And why not? It feels a whole lot better.
What about the trainers? And I'm not necessarily saying that they're at the aggressive stage, but they might start off, just saying something like, Oh, use your outside rein. And then they would say, and if the rider may not even understand how to use the outside rein, but they've told them once, then they yell at them, use your outside rein. And then they say, use your, whatever swear word you think of, outside rein. So this, we're not necessarily talking about someone being physically abusive, but the whole verbal abuse.
Oh my God, yeah, that's huge, and I think it's just a mark of like where you're as a teacher, you're at the end of your rope, so to speak, and you don't know how else to explain it, and then you think, oh well, saying it louder and yelling it and putting some colorful emphasis on it, that'll make my student understand. Well, it generally doesn't. And I really, I really learned this when I was, briefly in college when I was teaching German to beginners. And that was, sometimes, we would like resort to that, like in frustration. I was young then, and German is a very difficult language to learn. And so, people wouldn't get it. And then you just repeat it louder and louder, and they still don't get it. Well, that's a dead end. And so it's the same with teaching people how to ride horses. You just have to look for different words instead of, resorting to abusive language or yelling and screaming. I think we just need to, look to make our vocabulary and make our use of language in teaching, make that more effective and widen it a lot. Because, you always hear the same phrases in all lessons, and I think we can do better than that.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's just a matter of, asking the rider to stop and then going and explaining it and finding out what part of use your outside rein don't you understand.
Yeah, or if the student has enough confidence, and that's, back to teaching being a two-way conversation, the student needs to be comfortable enough and have enough confidence to say, what do you want me to do with my outside rein?
Yes, how?
Yeah, how do you want me to do
how do I do
rein?
it?
Exactly. And then it can be constructive in the conversation. But yeah, it's like yelling, that has never taught anybody anything. I've never learned much from being yelled at, and I've been yelled at a lot in riding lessons. And also, horses have super sensitive ears, and I just don't like to be loud around them. I'd love to experience the world like a horse does just for a day, wouldn't you? Like, the ears and the eyes.
Oh, look, I think you could learn so much. Yeah, for sure. What about, this is sort of going a little bit further, and like I said before, sometimes you see a trainer's got, or an instructor's got all of their students in a particular bit or a particular noseband, or everyone in draw reins or a particular martingale. What about when they take it that bit further and they say, this is what your horse needs, whether it's just a new saddle or a supplement or some sort of gadgety thing, which I happen to sell and, can give you a good deal on, but then taking it that bit further and saying, if you don't, you're an irresponsible, uncaring owner. So that guilt trip going further. Yeah.
Yes, I've been in barns where that was taken to the extreme, and everybody had the same super expensive dressage saddles and was feeding supplements that cost hundreds of dollars every month, and if you didn't do that, and it wasn't like it was absolutely mandatory, but you would feel really, really terrible about your horse care if you refused. And so I'm not saying it's wrong like to be a sales rep for a product that you believe in. I don't think I don't do it, but I know trainers that do, and they're responsible about it, and they don't sell them to people that don't need them, or they don't require that everybody in their barn or in their program use whatever it is. It's the guilt trip that's really the red flag. It's like, if you don't feed this, if you don't use this saddle, then you're just an irresponsible horse owner, and you'll so. But, the truth of it is there's a lot of good saddles out there, and there's a lot of good supplements out there, and, most horses don't even need them. And, there's students that have limited budgets, and if they can't buy a new saddle right then, there's a lot you can do with using, things underneath the saddle, or you can reflock it or whatever. So you don't have to say, oh, okay, you need this new $5,000 saddle, or you need this new noseband that's the latest thing. I mean, it's, there can be a conversation about it. I think there shouldn't be that pressure to say, well, it's like, if you don't fit my program, then you're not a good horse owner.
Yes, exactly. You've got to have the confidence, as you said, to clarify, to get an explanation, and to ask yourself the questions, whether or not you want to keep working with this person at this barn, or this adjustment centre.
Yeah, and not just with this trainer, also like barns, it's like, there's culture at barns, there's atmospheres that are created, and, that can be super obvious when you walk in there. It's not just the trainer, it's also all the clients and the dynamic between them. And so you walk in there and you can just kind of feel what, and if you want to be a part of that or not. And so the biggest compliment I've gotten is like, oh, your barn feels so welcoming. Oh, we so enjoy being here. And there's people that ride in Western saddles and people that have quarter horses and people that have gaited horses and people that have very fancy warm bloods. And so that is what I really shoot for, that everybody feels welcome and people are, learning, but they're also, not being put into this very narrow definition of what a good rider is and what success is and what learning is and what a good horse is.
Yeah. Katrin, this checklist, hopefully we've got people going through this checklist and saying, that's not a problem, this is good. Oh, I was at another barn once and that happened, but not now. So hopefully they've gone through, first of all, the checklist to make sure that the horse's training is going in the right direction. And they can go, yes, that's right. And then they also go through this list and the red flags from their trainer, and they don't have a trainer with these red flags. And even if they do have a trainer with one or two of these red flags, they feel confident enough to just get that trainer to explain why. As you said before, we're all human. We can't be absolutely perfect. We can all strive for that. But, the person's got to be confident enough to ask the trainer for clarification and to decide then, to make a decision then, do they need to stay here? Or, and sometimes too, the trainer may not be aware that there is a problem. So just having a conversation with the trainer.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And a lot of those trainers, they're good people and they're good with horses and they mean well. But it's like a lot of times, and I have had conversations like that with friends, like, oh, well, I've always done it that way, or I learned it that way, or I thought you had to do it that way. And so, that's a lot of times that is at the root of it. I don't think that in the horse world there's very many, truly abusive and horrible trainers out there. I mean, there's a few, but it's, most of us, we only try to make a living and we're in it because we love horses. So it's not so much that I'm saying, oh, there's all those horrible trainers that only take advantage of people. I mean, no, I think most trainers really at their core are good people and try to do right by their clients. But, I think the culture of trainers and of training and that is also changing. And I think it's overall in a positive direction where owners have more input and there's more diversity and there's more dialogue and it's, and there's more emphasis on good teaching. So I think that is all really, really good.
Yeah. Katrin, wonderful catching up with you again. I'm certainly looking forward to your next chat or our next chat. I think you've always got these interesting conversations and just to get people to go through and say, is this happening, is this not happening? And, they've got a bit of an idea of what to go about it. Do you know now what you plan to talk on next time?
I have no idea yet, but I'm sure I'll think of something on.
I'm sure. Absolutely, yeah. Look, what I often say to people when they say, look, I'm just not sure, I just say, well, what are some of the questions that your students ask you? What are the main questions and you can clarify?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the why question, that would be a really good thing. And and I also, one more thing about, I'm looking through my red flags and a lot of them have to do with better teaching or, teaching that's, in this tradition that's not very good. I mean, there is this attitude that I've come across in trainers, like those who can do and those who can't teach. And so I think, there's still a little bit of that out there where a trainer, thinks, well, if I'm really, really a good trainer, I shouldn't have to teach, like it's this lesser thing.
Yeah. And I think, as you say, it's part of the training. And I think, just if you're not sure on the training and what sort of course you're looking for and what sort of training you need, go to International Horse College. There's 6 different instructor courses there, and there's 6 different because we cover all different sorts of people. If you're teaching beginners, if you're a high-level competition rider and you want to go out and teach your students, if you want to have basic safety, if you want to do trail riding, recreation, just go to internationalhorsecollege.com. And I think if you go internationalhorsecollege.com/horse riding instructor, maybe it's horse-riding-instructor, you'll get all those 6 courses as well. So I think, as you say, Katrin, it's the training, the awareness, and just letting people know what's out there, what the expectations are.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. Katrin, if people would like to talk to you, they want you to clarify and they have listened to you and say, you know what, Katrin's the sort of person that I'd like to talk to about this problem that I've got with my trainer. What's the best way to contact you?
Okay, so there's my contact information is on my website at katrinsilvadressage.com. There's also a link to my blog, and there's articles about a lot of the issues that I've talked about on the Horse Chat. If you would, you can send me a message on Facebook. Katrin Silva Dressage has a Facebook page. There's an email that you can reach me at. There's all sorts of ways. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know if there's other red flags that you think are out there. I'd love to know your experiences with your trainer, positive or negative. And let's start a dialogue about it. I think it's all going in the right direction. I'd love to hear from people.
Perfect. All right, Katrin, looking forward to talking to you again, and we'll chat again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Glenys. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.